My friend made a very grievous mistake in life. If not that God better intervened. Some stories are not told because they are sweet. They are told because they are warnings. I didn't plan to ever share this story. In fact, for a long time, I tried to forget it. But each time I looked around this generation, how freely people love, how carelessly they enter relationships, how lightly we treat family, blood, and history, I begin to ask myself frightening questions. Does God permit some things to happen just to teach us lessons? Or does He stay silent for a while, watching, waiting until the day He finally intervenes? This is the story of my friend, a mistake so grievous that if God had not intervened when He did, many lives would have been destroyed forever. I will not mention real names, not because I am ashamed, but because some truths are too heavy to carry people's identities along with them. Please listen to this story to the very end. My friend grew up in what many of us would call perfect rule. His father was a respected businessman, the owner of a large company that employed hundreds of people, the kind of company where salaries came on time, where workers spoke proudly of their boss, and where success didn't come overnight, but was built patiently over decades. His mother was not just educated, she was accomplished, a senior banker, disciplined, elegant, and firm. People admired her confidence. Women looked up to her. Men respected her voice. They were one of those couples everyone admired. They loved each other deeply. You could see it in the way they spoke. The way the father always introduced his wife with pride. The way the mother defended her husband even when he wasn't present. But behind the smiles, behind the success, behind the respect, there was a silent pain. They were childless. Years passed. Prayers were said. Hospitals were visited. Medical files stocked up quietly in drawers. Nothing. At first, people were careful with words. Later, whispers started, and eventually silence replaced consent. In African societies, silence around childlessness is often louder than insult. When they had given up, they decided to adopt. First, they care. Then, they borrow. For the first time in many years, their house felt alive. Laughter filled the rooms. Toys scattered the floors. School runs, birthday cakes, bedtime stories. Everything returned joy to their home. People said God has finally remembered them. But tragedy is sometimes patient. When the children were much older, almost grown, an accident happened. A terrible one. One that didn't discriminate between love and effort. Both children died. Just like that. The house returned to silence. This time, worse than before. This loss nearly destroyed the marriage. Not because they blamed each other, but because grief entered the house and refused to live. Nights were longer. Conversations shorter. Tears came suddenly. Even during meals, they tried to move on, but some wounds don't heal. They only hardened. It was during this season, when hope was almost gone, that a decision was made. A decision that would later shake lives. One afternoon, while driving home, they noticed a woman by the roadside. She was deaf and dumb, a beggar. She was pregnant. She sat under the sun daily. stretching out her hand to passers-by. People dropped money, some looked away, some mocked. Life continued, but the banker woman noticed her again and again. Something about the woman disturbed her spirit. After days of silent observation, the couple approached her through someone who understands communication signs. They learned she had no family support, no stable home, and no plans for after childbirth. That was when the unthinkable idea was born. They told her they would take care of her throughout the pregnancy. Food, shelter, medical bills, everything. But there was a condition. If the child turned out to be a boy, they wanted the child not to traffic, not to harm, but to raise as their own. The woman didn't fully understand the future implications. All she knew was hunger, survival, and fear. With no voice to argue, no ears to ask questions, she agreed. No one knew about the plan. Not friends, not relatives, not church members, not even the closest family associates. Only three people knew the truth. The businessman, Mr. Phillips, his wife, and the deaf and dumb man. Immediately the baby boy was born. The couple took him straight to their own house. There was no celebration, no announcement, no naming ceremony that drew attention. Everything was done quietly and carefully. They paid the woman the great amount of money, more than she had ever had in her life. For the first few weeks, they allowed her to remain in the rented apartment they had provided during the pregnancy. Nurses checked on her. Food was supplied. Her wound healed. She regained strength. When the time came, arrangements were made for her to live. She was given additional money, some clothes, and transport fare. Through signs and written communication, she was made to understand that the child was now in good hands and that she should never return to ask questions. She left, and with her departure, the past was buried, or so they thought. From that day, the boy became officially theirs. They registered him under their family name. They presented him to the society as a miracle child. They raised him with care, love, and dignity. People rejoiced with them. Years passed. The boy grew healthy, intelligent, and respectful. He went to the best schools. He never lacked. The parents gave him everything: education, discipline, affection, and opportunity. But some things cannot be erased by comfort. The mother especially carried the secret like a wound inside her heart. She loved the boy genuinely, but some nights she cried silently. She feared the future, but hoped it would never come. The father chose silence. He convinced himself that what they did was necessary, that love would cover everything. And so life continued. As the boy grew into a young man, he showed leadership qualities early. He was calm, intelligent, and considerate. People liked him, not because of his background, but because of how he treated them. When he returned from the university, his father slowly introduced him into the company. First as a trainee, then as a supervisor, later as a manager. Workers trusted him. He listened more than he spoke. He didn't oppress junior workers. He valued loyalty. When his parents began to age, they entrusted most of the company's operations into his hands. The company expanded. Profits increased. Partnership grew. Everyone said, this man was raised well. And truly, he was. But no one knew the foundation of his life rested on a secret that had never been told. It was in the company that he met Monica, a young woman, beautiful, simple, and hardworking. She came from a poor background. Life had not been kind to her, but she was determined. She had gone through school with help from kind people, scholarships, and personal sacrifice. Despite her struggles, she carried herself with dignity. She worked in the company, not in a high position, but with dedication. She never drew unnecessary attention to herself. Yet people noticed her sincerity. Over time, my friend began to notice her. At first, it was professional respect. Later, it became interest. Then, affection followed. They became friends. She opened up to him about her life, how she had stopped her mother from begging on the streets, how she opened a small shop for her in their village, where she sold fried chicken and local wine to survive. He admired her compassion. He visited the village with her, met her mother. The woman was quite unable to hear, unable to speak, but she smiled often. She seemed harmless. Life had clearly broken her in many places. Their friendship grew into relationship. For nearly 2 years, they courted peacefully. No pressure, no scandals. Even his parents welcomed her at first. She visited their house freely. She felt comfortable there. She respected them deeply. When the time came to talk about marriage, everyone was happy until that fateful day. So one day, my friend and his parents decided to visit the girl's parents as custom demanded. The moment his parents saw the woman, everything stopped. They recognized her immediately. The woman who stood before them smiling on her way was the same woman they had once paid and sent away many years back. But she did not recognize them anymore. Time had changed faces. Pain had erased memories. The parents were shaken. They completed their visit in silence. On their return, they told their son clearly. On no account should he marry that girl. No explanation, just refusal. That was when war entered the house. My friend insisted. They refused. One morning, his mother knelt down and begged him. She asked him to find another woman. Any woman. He refused. He said love cannot be negotiated. He said unless they gave him a clear reason, otherwise he would proceed. They could not speak. The secret had grown too big to control them, but too dangerous to release. When it became clear that his parents would not change their mind, my friend hardened his heart. He felt betrayed. All his life, he had obeyed them. He had worked for their company. He had protected their name. Now, for the first time, he felt they were standing against his happiness. He told them plainly, if you don't want to bless this marriage, that is your choice, but I am going ahead. His parents cried, they warned, they pleaded, still he went ahead. The marriage was done quietly. Not the kind of wedding people expected from the son of the wealthy man. No loud celebration. No proud parents sitting in front. The whole felt good, even though people smiled. And so he married Monica. They moved into their own house. At first, love covered everything. They traveled together. They prayed together. They planned their future. But after 1 year, no child. 2 years, still nothing. By the third week, wars began. People started asking questions quietly at first, then openly. By the fifth year, even Monica began to cry at night. My friend blamed himself. Sometimes he blamed his parents in his heart. He believed strongly that maybe their refusal and bitterness had followed him into the marriage. That was when he suggested they go back and apologize. Monica agreed, but she also suggested they seek spiritual help. They chose a well-known prayer minister.
The journey to the prayer house was quiet. They fasted, they prayed, they believed answers would come. When they finally met the prophetess, she listened calmly. She asked questions. She prayed quietly for a long time. Then she looked at them and everything changed.
Thank you for spending your time with us on this story. But this is not the end. What happened next revealed the grievous mistakes men make and how the consequences can echo for years. Watch out for part 2.